is the Chapter 5, or Volume 5, or whatever you want to call it, of NookChat Chat. And tonight we're going to talk about first responders. And probably the most informed person on first responding in the entire area is sitting beside me, Mr. Anton Neyens. While he isn't one of the old-timers around here, he has been around a long time. And if he doesn't know a story, that means it hasn't been told, because he listens very well and he remembers a lot of stories that predate him in this community. When we think of first responders, we usually think of fire trucks and police cars and things like that. But when my family had first responders, that was the neighbors. And they would come with buckets, if it was a fire, or if it was police, they would just come and take care of the situation all by themselves. And then as we got a little further along and more people started coming, we started to have organizations. And as Anton will tell you, they organized a fire department here in this town, and they had a hose wagon. They had a wagon that had a hose around it. And the firemen would come and grab a hold of it and haul it down the street. And I don't have a clue as to how they got the water to run through the hose, but I guess you probably can tell us that. Can you tell us that, Anton?
It's very limited. Just around the cannery or the Carnation building.
Ah. You hear all that? It's around the Carnation building or the cannery. That's where the hose truck was, right up beside, just across the road from the depot. There was a shed there that had the hose wagon in it. Okay, you can take over. I'll hold it.
Okay, he's referring to where it was located, where the Nugent property is now. It was a two-car garage, a wooden garage, and they kept the hose cart there, and then they purchased a chemical cart. Maybe some of you seen the old soda acid fire extinguishers. It was just a big version of that. And they pulled it too, and then they had on both of them they had deposits of buckets. So they'd use a lot of buckets. Or somebody, if they had a fire, had a cow watering trough someplace, they could get buckets of water. It was very limited what they had. Of course, back in those days, most of your fires were chimney fires, because everybody burned wood. Now, I'm saying back in those days, we're going back to 1913, when the community, different ones wanted to work up some kind of fire protection, and then about 35 local businessmen and employees signed up and made up a what do you call it, a agenda, and they joined what they call the Everson Community Volunteer Fire Department. And to join that, they needed some funds, and so they all put $1 in. $1 doesn't seem like much money, but back then it was a lot. And then more if they wanted to. And they bought this hose cart. And then the hose cart, of course, was limited what it could do, so they had the buckets for that. And of course, there was a lot of cow troughs around for water. And some people had pretty good sources of pumps to pump water too. And that went on for several years. The chemical cart was a tank on, originally kind of like buggy wheels, like the hose cart. And then they bought a Model T truck with hard rubber tires. They bought it used and put it over in that, and then they could go further, and because the hose cart was kind of limited how far they could go with it. They would take it and pull it with a car, but it wouldn't do any good because there wasn't any hydrants or standpipes around anyway. So they depended pretty much on the chemical cart. And they kept that chemical cart around for many years, up till 1929, when the community was getting bigger and they had some firemen balls and dances and raised money and donations, and they ordered a new fire truck, a factory-made truck. It was a 1929 Ford AA, it was called. like a Model A, but it's a truck chassis, and with a Howe equipment, which is factory built, and they got that in 1929. And then, like we said, it's housed there by the railroad track. There by Nylotech. There's a two-car garage there. But with the fire truck, it had a water tank. So they had, in the wintertime, they kept it across the street in Everson Motors, Carl Rich's old garage. And then they built, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here a little bit. When there'd be a fire, they had to have some way of notifying people. So at Carnation Building there, they had a big boiler room. And they kept hot water boilers going all night. So if there'd be any kind of a fire, needing help, people needing help, they'd get word over to the boiler room, and they'd blow the whistle. And they had it kind of coded. One blow, long blow would be the fire, and say a short blow would be north, and two blow, short whistles would be south, and so on. Just like the old Morse code. And then you kind of, if you lived in the area, when you run down the center of town to see where you were going. And then, to kind of see if I'm getting ahead of myself here a little bit. The chemical cart, maybe some of you never seen them, but we used to have those in our businesses. Fire extinguishers in the schools had a lot of them. Chemical fire extinguishers. They were a round tank about 8 inches in diameter and 2.5 feet tall with a hose on it. It's soda acid, they call it. And when you charge that, it'd be water and soda mixture, and then they had some acid. But to charge it, you'd turn you had kind of a seal on it, and they'd break the seal, and let the acid go in the soda, and then make a foam. And then pressurize out the hose, it'd be handheld, and you use it like a garden hose. And that's, even on that chemical cart, it was just a big version of that. And then it was quite a mess to clean up afterwards. In fact, I used one once myself, and I was welding on a truck, and we'd spill some gasoline, and it caught fire. And that was the type of extinguisher we had, but after that we bought new ones, dry powder type, which were a lot better, and you could sweep it up. Or this chemical cart, as years went on, of course, they bought this new fire truck. It was surplus, and they sold it to a farmer down here by the school, Con Luton's. He used it to haul milk up here to the Carnation plant. And he took the chemical stuff. I don't know whatever happened to it. But anyway, we're so limited to what they could do for fire. But when they got that Model A fire truck, they covered, of course, they solicited the district quite a wide range for money, and they covered quite an area with it. But still, the local people were the ones that manned it. At that time, pretty much all the businessmen and employees consisted of the fire crew. In fact, I have a list of the you know, when you get old, you get shaky. Who's that telling me to be quiet?
How long did you keep the truck? Do you remember when the truck was put out of service?
Well, the Model A was kept here until 1958,
They got-
48.
So that was, when you said you got it in 29?
Got in 29 now.
29, so 20 years they had that vehicle. When did they start to house it in the, what is now the City Hall?
You know, the City Hall was 1935.
35. How many of you remember when it was in the City Hall? There's a few people, yeah.
Here's the list of the people that signed up on the roster of the first fire department. And there's 29 of them there.
Were they all in town?
Yes, they within running distance. Because you know, very few cars back in those days. It'd take a little time to saddle a horse up.
So you didn't do any rural areas at all?
Well, I imagine you would on chimney fires. Of course, that's all they handled about at that time.
I remember when we had a chimney fire, we just let it burn out.
Some of them burned down too.
Yeah. Well, that was in 48, yeah.
Yeah, I remember when Jim came to town. He was just a kid.
Well, my folks remember when he came to town and he was just a kid.
A grown kid then. Yeah. No, see, he was related to the Maidies. I came to work for Mr. Maidies in 1944.
When did Bill build the Mack truck?
The Mack fire truck was bought in 1948.
Didn't he put a tank on it?
No, the old tanker.
Tanker.
International Fire Army rig. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Anyway, in 1929, they got that Model A. And then the City Hall was built in 1935. So they had a place to store it. It was kept in the, like I said, in my Everson motor before that. Then the City Hall was built and they put the Model A and the hose cart in there. And then, I'm trying to think.
What happened to the hose cart?
Nothing, it's still here.
Still in the fire hall?
It's in the fire hall, I believe upstairs. No, we've kept that around as a keepsake.
Good.
And it's been in the parade, you should have probably have seen it, I'm sure. But anyway, when the war started, well, first of all, at City Hall, they moved the fire hall up there. And then the Carnation closed up on the milk receiving about the same time. So I kind of left them without an alarm system. And so they put a siren on top of the hose tower in the City Hall. You've probably seen that tower that sticks up off the roof of the City Hall. That's the hose tower, where they used to dry the hose. And then the telephone was in operation by then. And if you had a fire, you called a central telephone operator. You know, the telephone office is down across from the Baptist church. They're next to Starvin' Sam's. She had a button that she could push to set the siren off. And then there was kind of a motor. She didn't have to hang on to the button. It'd start this motor running. It made the siren oscillate for 2 minutes. And then the firemen would run to the City Hall, and they had a phone there inside that they could pick up, and the operator tell them where the fire was. That was, of course, started in '35 when the City Hall was put in there. And then during the war, on the air raid deal, the government, OCD, or the Office of Civilian Defense, decided they didn't want a bigger siren for air raid warning. So they furnished the city with a 3 horsepower siren. And still, it's on this fire hall over here now. It's still usable, but they don't use it because everything's electronic now. But anyway, that siren can be heard for miles. In fact, I had people clear down Hopewell area tell me, coming down where I was working, because I was working at Matey's Motors, and they'd say, we heard your siren, where'd you go last night? And so it was loud enough they could hear it over a long distance. And like it'd run for 2 minutes on that oscillating. Why it'd oscillate, you couldn't start a siren and just let it go up and peak out or scream, because you don't hear it as well as it oscillates. It goes up and down. But anyway, the firemen over in the city hall and find out where you're going and take off and go. In 1940, the state passed a law, the legislature, for the formation of fire districts. So in 1941, the community got together and solicited a petition to form a fire district. And that's why Everson, and then it was voted on and passed, and it was the first one in the county to have a fire district. So we're fire district number 1, Geneva down there at Lake Whatcom is fire district 2, and Linden community around it. It was the fire district 3, and that's the only fire districts there were until 1955. But the rest were just some of the community operated or township governments in, and they operated fire equipment. So, but Everson was the first one to have, or the community around here, the first one to have a fire district legally. Now,
how far did you go? How far did you cover?
Okay, too far. No, north was the Badger Road, south was the Kelly Road, which is quite a ways down. East was top of the hill. You come out of Deming by the Marshall Road. Actually, the Deming High School was not in the district. Their west border was a district line, but we had a agreement we'd cover the school. And then the west would be the Noon Road. So we had 74 square miles we covered. And we were doing it with just slow, not too fast equipment, but we had pretty good success. Then in 1948, we got this district. Well, no, we go ahead. Before that, in 1945, at the end of the war, the fire district bought a brand new surplus Army tanker. It had an 800-gallon tank on it. It was supposed to be used to haul fuel. And anyway, there was a fellow over Ferndale Burroughs, a gravel company. They got a mate to it, but they didn't want the tank. So this tanker had the 800-gallon tank and had a big box kind of on the back. Well, it's called the doghouse. That's where the reel was for the pumping the fuel out in their pump. Well, we tore that off and got the tank from Burroughs and cut it in half and welded on the back, made a 1,200-gallon tank. And then we put an auxiliary Wisconsin engine pump on it. And that we used that for several years. But before that, the city got a hold of a used truck during the war and had welded tank in steel. Built a body on it and put a tank in a skid mount pump, they call it, as a 500-gallon minute pump, and put it right in the back of the cab, crossways. Then the hose bed and tank were behind that in ladder racks. So from about 1944, that was before the tanker, we had a better pumper than, we still use the Model A though. Had it available. And in 1948, the new Mack fire truck came. That was pride and joy of the firemen. And it came in, I joined the department after Esther and I were married. We moved to Everson. I drove back and forth before that, lived at home. But we moved to Everson in February of '49. And so I joined the department, and just in April of '49, this new truck arrives. And I was working in the garage, and of course they brought in, equipped it in the garage, so I got to work out there. And then they just put it into service. I don't know the exact date, it was in the month of April. The city market, that's where the Sanford building, where they sell the smoke shop, I guess you call it now. That's where it stood, a big two-story building. The IFF Hall and the city market was in there. In the middle of the night, the siren takes off. Of course, I lived a block away. I lived over in First Street, kind of over next door where Don Porter lived, if any of you know that. Or in back of Bobby Lee, so in the next block. And as I come out the door, I thought High Note store was on fire. Big ball of fire in the sky. Of course, I was the first one to get to the truck. I got to drive the new truck to the first fire. But we had the old Chevrolet hat. And NookChat come over with their truck. They had a Chevrolet too, about the same thing. So we had three fire trucks pumping on it, and besides the firemen, and we put the fire out. And we got it out good enough we could tell it was two different fires. It had been arson fires. We never did figure out how it started, but we knew where it started. We saved the building well enough, but later they removed the building. Sanford built a new barber shop there in the insurance office. But now that was in '48. So we had
The trucks were in the city hall then, so you had what, two feet to drive? You didn't even take them out of the garage, did you?
Well, yeah, you had to get it out and get the hose off.
Oh. Drove them out of the garage, take the hoses off and back to fire.
Actually, what I did, I drove it out of the fire hall, backed up towards the fire, which was down in just the corner. Then grabbed the hose, started pulling it off. I took off, come down to by the Meany's garage, hooked up the hydrant there. So I put about a block of hose out. Then Don Porter, he took the city truck, we had it over in the furnace room there for the old condensery. And he got that down, and so he brought a hose from there over to the fire there by High Notes building. And then NookChat hooked over in there on Lincoln Street there by the city park, a hydrant. So we had hydrants come from three directions. And then, we made a good stop on it for all the fire there was. Of course, it really got to work out. And then, at that time, we had the Model A. What are you going to do with the Model A? Well, we didn't have room for it. So the community of Marietta didn't have any fire trucks. And they showed interest in it, so I don't know whether the fire district sold the Marietta the fire or gave it to them. I think they gave it to them so they'd have fire. They could develop a fire department. And that truck is still around. And Marietta took it, they used it until they got better equipment. They formed a district. They got better equipment, and they kind of more or less restored it. It was down in Seattle in a museum for a long time, fire museum. But they have it home now at the Marietta Fire Station there by the, on Bennett Avenue. And we had it out here. In fact, I got a picture of it.
And Barb Dunlap has the NookChat truck.
Dwayne Dunlap has the old tanker.
Oh, he has the old tanker too?
Oh, he's got the NookChat truck, that's right.
He's got the NookChat truck. Where'd the tanker go?
Our tanker, that Army tanker we had, when we replaced it, he bought it to move houses with.
Oh, took the tank off.
Took the tank off, yeah.
Oh, that's...
See, that Army rig was a 6x6, six-wheel drive. And made a good, for his house moving, made a good deal. Why don't
Here's a knife.
There's a Model A.
That's a Model A?
Yeah.
Let's pass that around. We'll pass this one around. These are the trucks Dave's been talking about.
Well, that's
And these are the 49, these are the firemen, huh?
yeah, it's the firemen, a bunch of,
That's the crew. And
wish I had a table here.
Hmm? Got some more. Easier than you can. Horse-drawn one here.
Well, that's
Everett.
yeah, that's Everett Fire Department. That's
They
one of
drove
our
the-
parades. One of our parades.
They drive the horses all the way up here from Everett?
No, we got a local team
Ah.
from the. But anyway, right behind was the fire behind was.
This is a new tanker.
Yeah, that's a new one.
There's an old pumper. Now, how many trucks could you get in the city hall? There were two, weren't there?
There was two originally, two stalls, and then they had a third stall built in the entryway over the west side for three stalls.
3 stalls.
Yeah, so we had up until that time, after we got the Mac, we had to keep the Chevrolet over in the boiler room in either the cannery or at the Coronation Building.
So when did you build the new, when did the Arden Farm go out and the new building built?
That was in 78, we built that building. But anyway,
How many remember Arden Farms? That's where the fire hall is now. And they tore it down, they built this. 78?
1978.
So that's the new truck.
Well, anyway, we're back. We operated with the Mack truck and then the International Army rig tanker for several years.
Do you have any more fire stories besides the IOF building? I mean, you got lots of stories, I know. So,
I'm just trying to keep in sequence. Anyway, well, when I first joined back there in the 50s, we probably have 50 fires a year. And a big share of them are chimney fires. But a house fire once in a while. And now with the 911 deal and the aid cars and that, I think they had 600 this last year calls. And still with basically a volunteer department, so it takes a lot of time. Our firemen, we consisted of, as I said originally, businessmen and some of their employees. I was with Matey's. There was 3 of us out of Matey's garage on the fire department. So anytime there'd be a fire, Well, he'd lose half his crew. And, but anyway, nobody, he didn't mind. Then it was kind of, now there's only 2 or 3 businesses in town that have men on the fire department. Everson Auto Parts, Kelly Insurance, and I don't know if there's any other. But it's, and then most of the firemen used to live right in town or nearby, and now there's none hardly live in town. They have a distance to come. Well, anyway, after the MAC, then in 1968, 1948, they ordered another new truck, and we created another station with Nugent Corner. And the Everson firemen, they trained. First of all, we had training sessions. The state put on kind of night school, one night a week. They'd bring instructors in, like from Seattle and Bellingham, and like Mr. Jefferson from Bellingham. He was an instructor, and Everett, good, well-trained fire people, and we had training. But we were pretty well trained, and then we had Red Cross, first aid, and so we were pretty well trained, and we in turn trained the Nugent Corner firemen. We moved that Mack truck down there. We got the new truck in Everson. Of course, I won that truck because I sold it to him. I was selling the trucks at that time.
You had to go back and pick them up too, didn't you?
Jim Harbaugh drove that one out.
But didn't you go back and pick up some vehicles?
Oh, I couldn't count them on my fingers.
They had to go back to the factory and...
We brought 7. We brought 7 out in one drive.
7 trucks?
7 trucks, not fire trucks. No, in 1965, Randy Wright and I brought 7 trucks out by piggybacking. Had 4 in one group and 3 in the other. We drove straight through from Pontiac, Michigan.
Just 2 drivers?
No, it's 4. He had 2 school friends with him, Randy did. He was going to Aurora College in Chicago, and I took him to there, one group, and 4 trucks, left him there, and I went back to Pontiac, Michigan, and got the other 3 and brought them back there. And he, in the meantime, serviced the truck, got him ready to go, the first group. So then I took off and went to Dubuque, Iowa, to a cousin's place. Then he and his pals, after school was out, he was going to college. They had a ball game on Friday night, and he got out of the ball game after midnight to get the trucks picked up. They headed for Dubuque, Iowa, and got in Dubuque about 4 in the morning. My cousin gave him breakfast, and we headed out. We pulled in here Monday afternoon. We had a breakdown on the way, lost a pulley on the fan, or on the pump. And in the middle of Montana, by Lamere, Montana, northeaster blowing. This is a week before Christmas. Snow in the air and northeaster blowing, and had another truck up on top. There was the same kind of pump on it, so I, with a flashlight in my mouth, I climbed up there and took the pump off. Come down and put it on them when we were driving. And we had no way I could turn them around or anything to go back and get them find someplace to get them fixed. So I had to do it myself. But anyway, we made it out here. I made it as far as Gundy's, or Britain Road, on the Mount Baker Highway. The truck I was driving, fan blade broke. And here we were stuck. So anyway, I'm getting my head of the story, but I might as well finish it. I was surveying what damage we had and how we were going to do about it. Up over the pickup beside, and here's the Everson Service Center pickup. One of the mechanics was going to town to pick up parts. So I chased him down to Gundy's and got a chain, and we come back, hooked onto it, and pulled to Everson. 4 trucks plus a pickup. But, where was it? Oh, in 49, 59, 59, we got that new GMC Roni fire truck. And then started Nugent Corner going. Then we bought a old surplus tanker from Hillview Farms in Sumas for a water tender out of Nugent Corner. And we didn't have any building up there, but Edwards or Johnson service station there where Dodson's is now was they had a lube room that they weren't using, so we used that for a fire station. And then that went on for about 10 years, and then we built a new station at Nugent Corner across the road. And we were big enough for 2 trucks and a meeting room. And then, see, I gotta get to my notes here.
When did you build the station? So it'd be about 69 you built the station across the road from Johnson?
No, it'd been 59, about in the middle of the 60s. Yeah, it'd be about in the middle of the 60s we built a station. Anyway,
So you didn't go to the fires down at Nugent's up and Deming anymore?
oh yeah, it's been up there a lot of times. No, we covered our whole district. And even with Deming, it was a structure fire, we responded with both stations. Chimney fire, no, just one station would respond.
I know when I had a fire in, what was that, 77, I guess. You were the first one there. You only took 3 minutes to get there, but Nugent's came right afterward.
That was the 4th of July, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Playing the firecrackers.
That was an interesting story. We had a building catch fire, and he remembers all about it because. But whenever I ran through the house, said we got a fire, and told my wife to call. She called, and Bailey answered, and he says, "Who is it?" And she couldn't remember her name, couldn't remember her address, couldn't remember anything. And he says, "What's your last name?" He says, "Berg." He said, "We'll be there." He said then when he went outside, the fire was underneath a cedar tree, and the cedar tree was green, and so it was putting up green smoke, or black smoke. He said it went up about 1,000 feet. He said they didn't need any address. They just went outside the door, looked down there, and knew where to go.
Well, getting on that subject of address, we used to not have an address system. And just, you'd come in so-and-so's house. Well, you kind of knew who it was or whereabouts it was, so you'd take off. Somebody in the group would know who the individual was. Now, we did have one fire that had come in the end of the, on the Goodwin Road at the end of the, which is the first road down. mile down, crossroad.
On the east side?
Massey Road.
Massey Road, yeah.
Yeah. And it came in as the end of the Goodwin Road. Well, sure, the best way to go to the end of the Goodwin Road would be go down the Highway 9 and up to Hopewell. We did, well, it happened to be at the end of the Massey Road on the Goodwin Road. So anyway, by the time we got the word on that, we ended up losing the house. I don't think they ever forgave us.
I remember all these people were volunteers. Nobody got paid for doing this.
But then finally they got an address system the county engineers put together. I and Dwight Cruey, who was the postmaster, was on the committee, and the present address system we established. But still, you have a hard time finding where some people live. They live back a lane back in the woods someplace. Don't have very good markings. So it's very important that if they would only realize and have a marking of some kind out by the road, address post. But we have messed up on too many. Now we start on the alarm system. Like I mentioned, the telephone. Well, in 1950, they built a new telephone office. In fact, it sits right over here and back. It was a dial system. Well, that kind of did away with the operator. So they come up with the idea of fire phones. So they gave us 8 fire phones. It's just a regular phone without a dial on it, with a dial off. There's a button in place of the dial. There's a party line. So anyway, the call came in. First of it is Everson's Beatty's Motors had a fire phone, and or Bobby Lee's, it was a Valley House at that time. They had a fire phone. One in the city hall, and one over at Bailey Station. In the daytime that worked fine, but at night you had to depend on somebody at home, which was 4 of us had phones at home. And you take the call and then you push the button and then turn the siren on. But on weekends, somebody had to be near the phone when the businesses were open. So then we had to do, the firemen would have to take turns. We had Sunday duty, we called it. 2 firemen would stay in town near a phone. If they didn't have one at home, which I was lucky I did, but they had to be at the fire hall all day then on their Sunday watch. They come about once every 3 months. In fact, I think Esther and I spent the 4th of July at the fire station one time. But that worked pretty good, but then later on they went electronic on the phone. Oh, and back in 1954, when the mobile refinery was built, or Ferndale, when they were finishing there, the Bechtel Company, a national contractor, building it, they come in and with all their equipment, build up like the refinery, and then when they wound up, they were just up to sell everything. They didn't have it, take it with them. Well, they had radios for sale. And we heard about it, and we come up with the funds. I'll get into that in a moment here. We come up with the funds of the firemen, and we bought the radios out of our kitty. Now, we bought 6 mobile radios and 1 base station. So we were the first in the county to get radios. And that's just for our own use, but it would come in very handy. The fireman funds used to have a fireman ball once a year to raise money for coffee. And probably incidental fact, more than just coffee, the city hall did not have a hot water tank. They had a kitchen, but no hot water tank in it. Of course, we, at the City Hall, we liked our coffee and so on after fire meetings. So we bought a water tank with some of our funds. And then that's how we raised it. Then also we bought a resuscitator. You don't know what a resuscitator is, but it's a breathing machine, pulmotor they call it. And whenever we got any funds by donation or whatever, we'd buy some equipment with it. Then when they started the fall festival, we put up a hamburger booth. First the festival was held out in the front on Main Street, but there wasn't much room for it other than the parade. But a year or so later they moved it back into the park. You used to get Western shows come in with carnival and then there'd be different booths around, and we put up a hamburger booth. That was a real money winner. We sold hundreds of dollars worth of hamburgers. I don't know how much. In fact, the bakery company made 2 trips a day on a Saturday of the festival to bring buns out to us. And we'd start early Saturday. Well, set up, we built a booth, probably the width of this, maybe the size of this little room, with our booth with seating on both sides and a counter in front. We bought 2 grills, hamburger grills, big ones, besides that table there, but. And then about 2 drip liter coffee pots. Why I'd say drip liter, because we had to have that kind of power and stuff. They were propane fueled. Oh, not the coffee pots. The grills are propane fueled. Had 2 French fryer cutters. I had 2 French fryer vats to make French fries. We bought a couple sacks of potatoes for French fries. And like I said, I don't know how many hamburgers. It's hundreds of pounds of hamburger. We'd borrow refrigerators from high notes to store them during the day. But we started before parade. We'd open up, and Ladies Auxiliary helped a lot in that. And like I said, we sold hundreds of dollars of hamburgers, and we bought equipment with it, like helmets, fire coats, and then we take the wives out to dinner once a year. And then, the fire department is a little bit of a social club, but yet it was a lot of fun. I mean, we did a lot of work. And it come to different things around town. I mentioned the festival. We used to have the fall festival. Well, that's when with the hamburger stand. But the parade, that was a parade that nowadays it's a small parade compared to what it used to be. And I don't want to take credit for it, but I was the parade chairman. We built big floats. The fire department went in the chamber together. We had some prize-winning floats. We'd take them like to Seattle, P&E. We took them like to Wenatchee, to Blossom Time, Apple Blossom Dealer, Wenatchee, Cedarwood, Bellingham. In fact, I got some pictures here of 3 of the floats. But it was a big float, and be probably 25, 30 feet long, 12 feet wide, or better than 12 feet wide. And we can drive it. We had the sides that fold up, and the driver, we took an old car chassis, and we took and put a platform out in front of the radiator. Took the body off, of course. Platform out in front of the radiator. Moved the steering wheel up in front, and the driver sat up in front of the radiator, real low, just like they doing those hydroplane boats. And we had the controls so we could shift gears and work the hand controls and all that. They were real professionally built. And Jim Rohrbaugh was one of my partners in the Everson Service Center. He was quite an engineer, and those things worked perfect. We drove the thing like clear to Wenatchee. We'd fold these sides up and drive like to Wenatchee, drive it to Bellingham or Vancouver, PNE. We took it all over.
What kind of a chassis was that on?
Originally, it was a 1934 DeSoto. But then the motor went bad in it, and it was pretty hard on clutches. So we got a hold of a 41 Dodge motor with fluid drive, put that in it, and that was a real deal. We didn't have to worry about the clutch and the fluid coupling. And you could go as slow as you wanted, or it didn't have to be pushing the clutch down all the time. It worked out real well. I don't know whatever happened to it, but when the chamber changed from the fall festival, I don't know why they changed it, but they did, went to a junior rodeo, which was down by the Riverside Park. We lost our booth because we didn't have a booth then, but they went on for a few years, and then they put on the summer festival we have now. But
when was the summer festival started? You remember?
I don't remember what year. Must have been
Anybody have any questions? We're going to break here in a couple of minutes. Can anybody have any questions that back there?
Yeah, so you said that the AT&T office was next to Starvin' Sam, but it's now right here in Everson. When did they build it, and was it always under AT&T?
What was the question?
I didn't hear the question.
Just the
You
history.
want to stand up and tell them? Speak up.
I'm just curious about the telephone system. You said that the operator was right next to Starvin' Sam's, but I think all the telephone is run from this AT&T building right here next to the library now.
The operator, the telephone company?
Yeah.
Telephone company is where Dwayne put up his logging. He cut that stump into a logger, just about 100 feet this way from Highway 9 on the north side.
Okay, so it's still there. So it's still separate between
That
Zach and Everson.
residence was the telephone building.
Wasn't that the Farmers Mutual Telephone Company?
Farmers
Yes.
Mutual, correct.
Before that, the building was a dairy, small dairy.
It was
Then
a creamery. The NookChat creamery was in there.
And then the telephone company took it as a
Yeah.
central office for many years. And then they built a new one here in 1950. It's still in operation.
And it got consolidated into AT&T?
Well, it changed to from Farmers Mutual to Continental Telephone and another company before. Now it's whatever it is.
Now it's basically the
Yeah.
new AT&T.
It's went through three or four changes.
Yeah.
I remember the telephone company when you crank the thing on the wall and the lady says, what's there? And I says, Matilda, I want to talk to Aunt Hattie. She said, well, I don't think she's home. And I said, why don't you think she's home? Because she told Charlotte she was going to town this morning. Spence.
And you could dial people on your own line. There were party lines.
Yes.
Up to, you'd have 10, 12, 14 people on a party line. And if you knew their ring, you could dial them without going through Central.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we knew everybody's ring.
Yes. And I still have one of the batteries from those. There was 2 batteries. About that big around and about so long.
So it was
to operate it. And
Whatever
I
happened to all those wall phones? That's what I want to
Yeah.
know. I'd like to have one of those wall phones.
Yeah.
Oh, we had one originally, Esther and I did, when we moved to Everson, 1939, 49. That's what the phone we had was this big old box up on the wall. The mouthpiece coming out, I had in the earpiece, the crank over on this side.
Yep.
And that was,
Didn't worry about little kids doing it because then nobody could reach that high.
And that was a four-party line.
Any other
order.
questions before we break?
So it was independent, but it was still hooked into the AT&T monopoly, so you could do long distance?
Well,
but nobody
that's
would-
when it was Farmers Mutual.
Okay,
And then they changed
okay.
when they.
In the storm of 1950, they lost 60% of their lines.
Yep.
And we didn't have telephone for 6 weeks because they got the lines back up. And then they switched to a dial system, but nobody else in the country had dials, so we couldn't dial anybody. By the time everybody else got dial system, our dial system was obsolete, so we still couldn't dial anybody.
You talk about the lines being down. I remember, wasn't 50, this was before 50, but the storm took a lot of the telephone lines down. Well, my dad and my brother went out and started putting lines back together and used electric fence post insulators and put it on fence posts, because you didn't have to go through Central. If your wires went to your neighbors, you could ring your neighbor and talk to your neighbors.
Didn't have government control in those days.
No.
Time for break?
No, just one more question.
We got it.
How many hours of training do you think you had in all of your years of working on the fire department for training new firefighters, and for your hours that you put in, how many would you guess that you worked or volunteered?
You mean altogether?
Yeah, I mean, if you're just giving.
Well, I was on the department for 40 years. I don't know how many
We'll
hours.
get this answer after the break, because we're going to switch.
Well, we got a little sidetracked there, so now we're gonna let Anton carry on in chronological order and finish out his wonderful years as chief of this whole outfit.
Okay, first I kind of want to review the bylaws, which we had. These were made up in 1913. And, but the meeting schedule, once or twice a month, but they had to pay $1 to join the department. But if they missed a meeting, they had to pay another $1. If they were late to a fire, they paid 50 cents. That's how they raised their money. They had, of course, meetings, you had to have officers, so that was kind of a popularity contest back in the beginning. And they were elected officers every year, in the first meeting in January. Chief and then a secretary and treasurer and captains and so on. The fireman's duties were for non-attendance. Oh, I had that wrong. For non-attendance, the scheduled meeting was 25 cents. For leaving meetings without permission was 25 cents. Refusal to come to order when called in a meeting was 25 cents. In other words, you had to pay attention. Absent from roll call was 50 cents. Leaving a fire while on duty without permission was 50 cents. Disobeying any reasonable order of the officer was 50 cents. And any willful violation of rule regulations for the government of the department, meaning was 25 cents to be collected forthright. For non-attendance, the meeting was 50 cents. Now, a lot of the original volunteers, I knew some of them. There was a John Thompson. I don't know, maybe
I knew him.
Spencer would know him.
Yep.
Milton Sear. Ken Ballrood, you probably knew him. He lived right over here across the bridge, the White House right in the corner where Cale Street and Everson Road come in there. He lived right in that corner, the big White House. Clyde Reed, he was on the department yet when I joined. In fact, he was mayor of the city back in those days. He ran the Everson News publication. Of course, C.S. Cale, you've heard that name before, Cale Canning Company.
Yep.
John Sear, he was still here when I joined too.
C-Y-R?
What?
John Sear, C-Y-R?
CYR. I think I showed you the original roster. What's that?
They all could write legibly too. They all could write legibly too. You don't need to have them printed underneath.
It was in English also.
You didn't have to punch tube or something else, huh?
Even though there were a lot of Swedes and Dutchmen around. Let's see, where do we?
Well, you were in the 60s.
Well,
When did you become chief?
Okay, I became chief. Like I said, it was a popularity contest to start with. And anyway, I'd been in the department 10 years, 1959. Bud Iverson was chief at the time. And then they voted me in. And I was chief for over 3 or 4 years, and in the district, the underwriters, the insurance deal, state insurance, they recommended it to have a hired chief instead of a volunteer chief. So they appointed me as hired chief, $25 a month. But anyway, and then they didn't, I wasn't up for voting on it anymore. We voted on the rest of the officers, our secretary and captains and all that. They'd vote those in every year. But so I promoted to chief in 49, and I retired in 89. I was chief for 30 years. Is that right?
Not quite.
59.
Yes.
50, yeah, it's 59 now. That's what it was.
So you're responsible for it all.
Well, not all of it. No, everybody did their part, had their part. And like I mentioned it, we had bought a resuscitator. When the call would come in on for aid call, and a lot of times you use a resuscitator for a heart attack, or that was the main use for it, to try and revive a person. It kind of it was before the CPR system started. And we carried it on the fire truck. And then a call would come in, we'd either take the fire truck or take the resuscitator and put it in somebody's car and go. Well, in 1960, the Lions Club, well, Gus Lindbergh, several of you probably knew him. He was very active in the department. He was one of the fire commissioners, and then he originally, and then he was a big member of the Lions Club. And he said when we take the resuscitator, take it in our car, we had no siren or no red light or anything like that. He approached the Lions about buying a vehicle for us. And so we bought a 1957 Dodge Town Car, which is a Suburban. We put the resuscitator in it and then some first aid equipment. So that way we had a first aid car. It worked out very well. And then in the Lions Club purchased a car. I sold them the car through the garage. I painted it and red. It was brown before that. And then the firemen, they bought the Siren and the beacon ray lights. So the fire district or the city didn't have any investment in it. It was all furnished by the firemen. But then in 1974, they started a new EMT system, and then they replaced it with a newer Suburban. In I mentioned that about the Nugent Corner. In 1965, I was down to Bellevue. They had a schedule for some work on their fire trucks. And I was talking to the chief down there, Chief McCarthy. He told me that they covered the fire district, the city of Bellevue covered the fire district around the perimeter of the city. And we ought to do the same in Everson. And because the fire district had good equipment, Everson didn't have any equipment to speak of, an old Chevrolet. Wasn't a qualified truck, and the tanker wasn't either. So I came back with the news to the commissioners and the city council for the district to contract with the city for fire protection and a written contract. So they pursued it. NookChat did too. And so the fire district took over the firefighting in both NookChat and Everson. It lowered the insurance rates 47%. By just doing that little maneuver on paperwork. And now, here this last year, is on the ballot to take for the city, the two cities to go in with the district. Now the cities belong to the fire district as far as fire protection goes. So instead of the city taxing the patrons for fire protection, the district does the taxing. In 1973 or 74, when they started the EMT program, later than that, around in the 80s. We were using this Suburban as the aid car. Had one for each station. Suburban for Nugent Corner and a Suburban here. They made good aid cars because they're easy to get around with and four-wheel drive and so on. But you couldn't transport anything with them. St. Luke's Foundation, I heard, came up when they merged with St. Joe's Hospital. When St. Luke's merged, the organization they called St. Luke's Foundation started up, and they had a surplus ambulance. And I heard about it, so I went and approached them on it, what they're going to do with it. And they gave it to me. Very nice ambulance. So I brought it out to Everson and gave it to the district, and they painted it up, all that, and we had a first-class factory-built ambulance. And then the district in turn, Bellingham, on the paramedic program, they was replacing some of theirs, so the district bought one of the Bellingham units for the Nugent Corner station. So we had very good 8 cars. And then several of our firemen, Big Siren trained for the EMT program. And we have three firemen are paramedics through the Bellingham. They Bellingham firemen, and they are trained paramedics. Floyd Rohrbaugh, Randy Vanderheiden, and Kurt. Kurt Brulin are Bellingham paramedics, and so they respond with on their days off, they respond with the Everson units. So we're very fortunate to have some paramedics. Sometimes they're more valuable than what a doctor would be in certain instances. I've seen where a doctor one time called paramedics to come and take over because he didn't know what to do with emergency situations like they have. Very fortunate to have them.
How many of those 600 calls you got last year were for medical reasons?
Oh, I would say 90%.
90% medical and 10% fire responders.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, that'd
Of
be
course,
huge.
sometimes it's abused in a way, not the fire department's problem, the public. Sometimes they've got a bee sting, they'll call paramedic, call the A car. I mean, that's no kidding. They're very simple things. Sometimes they call A car. And another thing is, when I was on the department, I get calls from people wanting to know the firemen to do this or do that on a volunteer basis. And I said, well, can't you get somebody else to do it? Yeah, but you firemen know how to volunteer. And they could have got other individuals to do it. It used to kind of irritate me a little bit. Because we thought we'd doing our duties to start with. Because nobody profited from it except my $25 a month. And I took care of my gas and phone calls. But, well, in 1974...
Did you ever get a pay raise?
I didn't, no. When my...
30 years you served at $25 an
No,
hour.
no, not 30 years, probably
But whenever they started paying you,
Yeah.
they never paid you
10,
more.
10 or 15 years. But we put in many hours, even all night sometimes. You get a big fire. And we had several big fires, house fires. I was trying to figure out how many fires with fatalities in it, and I counted up six house fires with fatalities. And that's kind of a gruesome deal when you got that. And then we had probably a dozen accidents with fatalities and accidents, which kind of is spooky for you. I remember my first A call I had was a heart attack, and the fellow was gone. I got there, but I dreamt about it for a week probably until I kind of got hardened into it. But the volunteers do a great service. Now we talked about pay. I was over at Linden, delivered them a new truck, and the underwriters there testing it for fire rating. And I found out that they were paying their firemen, 6 firemen, $3 per call. And I came back with the idea, that'd be nice if we got that too, but I wouldn't work it that way. Because I said, like I told our commissioners, if I was man number 7, I wouldn't go. And I said, if you could do something like that, we'd put it in a fireman's fund and we'd use it for the good of the whole department. So that little income we got coming in be $18 a fire or an A call. And we buy, well, I got some pictures here. They show the firemen all with coveralls on. We bought coveralls for them. We buy jackets. We bought a lot of equipment. Well, like I said, the E-car, the firemen put the siren and the red lights and stuff on it. That all come out of the fireman's kitty. It was none of it used for the fireman's own good. Then we bought extra insurance. They're covered by insurance, like industrial insurance. If you got hurt on the job, they take care of your needs to a degree, but nothing great. So we bought additional insurance in case firemen get hurt, it'd be covered better. But thank goodness we never had to use it, that I know of.
Did you ever have any firemen hurt?
Nothing extensively. I got hurt once. I had a fireman who just Deming, Niles store in Deming. And I was up on top of the back fire truck and we were reeling the hose in. We wanted to move it away from the fire. So, and the driver was in the seat waiting for the hose to get wound up on the hose reel. I was up there kind of threading it to keep it from piling up. And anyway, as the nozzle come up off the ground, the driver, he let the clutch out. And I fell off the top of the truck. And probably the closest anybody got hurt. I lit on the ground head first, right against a big Sound Power night truck. But I had my helmet on and that protected me. And it turned my shoulder out. I killed her, but I got over that. But we had one fireman go down. There's one Pat's Place restaurant here in town, next to the fire station, on fire. Anyway, he just kind of sank, went down. He had attacked us sometime. We sent him to the hospital, but come to find out he was diabetic, and he didn't know it, and he overdone. That's probably the only time we sent anybody to the hospital. Another time we had a house fire and going down the basement steps. We had the fire out, but the steps are all covered and stuff, and I was going to go down, check things, and I slipped, and it's just like a shooting suit. Going down the steps, but boom, 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 boom. But I didn't get hurt on it. I was in my feelings. In 1958, the district, no, it's 68, district bought 2 more trucks, new pumper for Everson. That's when we replaced that old Army rig. And then we replaced that milk tanker, but Sumas, with a new truck too. But we moved the tank, stainless steel tank from the milk truck put on the new truck chassis. So we both had new trucks. In 1985, we bought a new pumper for Nugent Corner. In 1989, we bought the new tanker for Everson. And I don't know, many have ever seen that new tanker we got a snow plow on it, or it goes on it, and that, so we can, but it hasn't really snowed good since. Maybe it's good insurance.
What about the river boats?
Mm-hmm.
The boats?
Oh, yes. We've had 2 or 3 different times drownings in the river. And it's quite a chore trying to find out how to rescue somebody in case they need it. So the firemen, again, firemen's funds, they took and bought an inflatable boat, a rubber boat. It wasn't inflated all the time. Boat and a motor with a jet engine on it, outboard jet, for river rescue. That's been then they took a training course in river rescue work, going in the river with life preservers on to rescue somebody. They've had 2 or 3 occasions for that. several years ago, there was a girl lost up in Acme. It figures not kidnapped, but how would you say? Anyway, our crew on our boat going up the South Fork of the NookChat found her body up on in the brush up against the mountain. But now the district bought a second one. Each station has a boat. 1978, they wanted to build a new station. And so they put on, the only time it's ever been on the ballot up to date, a bond issue to build a, so they wanted to, before that they was pay cash or contract on equipment. But they put a bond issue up to build a new station, and then they bought a new truck for Nugent Corner and new 8-car, one of the Suburbans. But it's the only time the fire district has ever put a bond issue up. Now I understand they got a levy on the ballot for coming up, because being such a demand on the firemen, they want to get a couple, three paid. They got 3 personnel paid now, and they probably should, to give decent coverage, should have another one at least. And it's expensive when you have hired help. And they built that new station originally down on Mount Baker Highway, but here a few years ago they replaced it with a new station there on the Lawrence Road, just up from Nugent Corner. Real nice station. And this station here, when they built it, the bondage was $250,000. Station and the property and all. City, at that time we didn't have the contract with them. City bought the lot for $50,000. Fire district built the building for $200,000. So a total of $250,000. The new station down in Nugent Corner cost over $1 million. But they had money saved up enough to build it. But that's just how prices increase over the years. Because this
Are they about the same size?
equipment size, yes. That's got living quarters down there, in it, so you can have full-time firemen. And
Does the sheriff use that one too?
what?
Does the sheriff use that station down there?
I think they got an office in there, a radio room or something. Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know whether the county pays them usage or what. Because I retired from the department in '89, and 99, and it's been 25 years since I retired. So I don't know what goes on all the time. No.
That's how, I find that hard to believe, but that's how it's.
Well, since I've been kind of handicapped here from my age, it's no fun to get old. But anyway, I don't get around like I used to, so I don't even get my coffee times, except at home.
Steve, didn't you?
Oh, once in a while, somebody will take pity on me and take me to coffee. I don't know, is anything
Anybody have any questions that
Yeah.
have come up? Yes.
Oh, I had one about the olden times when you had the old-fashioned fire trucks. Was there any kind of information that people had to say they knew, or any tests they took to become part of a group like they are today? Or did everybody just run out and hop on a...
Just run out. Well, we had our firemen, which on the original, like I read in there, original bylaw, about 30 firemen. And there's the county insurance, that's all they wish to respond. None. If an outsider come want to give a hand, we usually let them do something, but when that keep them out of the fire scene, where they wouldn't get hands too close to get hurt because they wouldn't have any insurance. Is that you was wondering? If a bystander would help?
No, she wondered if those on the roster had any training that, or what?
The training of the old timers?
Yeah.
Oh, like I mentioned earlier, the state back in the 50s put on a training program. And one night a month, they'd send an instructor in from out of the area. Like I mentioned, Wilton Jefferson out of Bellingham, fire chief. He come up, held sessions with the firemen, hands-on. And then
Before that, they didn't.
before that, they didn't have any, just hard work.
You know, like back in the olden days when they weren't organized really, but I just have this picture of the fire and the siren or whatever, and everybody just jumping on.
Well, you're kind of trained on the job.
Oh, one day at a time.
One day at a time.
Fire at a time.
I remember one story that Carmen tells about when the hotel burned in NookChat, and they were all passing the plates and everything out from the kitchen out the window, and they had a chain gang inside passing all this stuff out. The only thing they didn't remember is there was nobody outside to catch it. So they were all in this burning building saving all this plateware, and as it turned out, it all got destroyed anyhow.
Well, I had an occasion similar to that. When I was still living at home, our home burnt. Clear down, and anyway, in the dining room there was a buffet, and we had in there, we had a tin box where we kept our valuable papers and savings bonds and so on. And my mother always said, if the house ever catches on fire, get to that box, get it out of here. Well, the house did catch fire. Nobody was home. My brothers were down, we lived out at Silver Beach. My brothers were down at the lake swimming, and they saw it. And anyway, Lucille here, her husband and his brother's just older than him, my brother's just younger than I. They got in the house, they got to that buffet, got the box, busted the window out and tossed the box out. It went everywhere in the yard.
Big help.
But they jumped out and picked the stuff up, so it didn't burn. Yeah, we went through that experience of losing our home to fire, which was drastic. I and my brother, just older than I, we were out of town, and when we come home, we met my younger brothers on the road, and they said, "No use going home." Why? There's no home there anymore. But we survived. The Bellingham Fire Department came out, but they didn't have any water with them. And so the neighbor's chicken house fire later, and I was working here in Everson, we had this tanker, Army tanker. The chicken house, we caught fire. And my dad called the chief here, Wally Mariotto at the time, wanted to know if he'd bring that tanker down. So he did, clear down to Silver Beach. We saved the chicken house, 2/3 of it.
Any other questions? Way back there.
So how
Speak
many,
up.
okay, how many hours a month did you volunteer? Like 20, 30, or 40 hours a month would you volunteer?
No, it all depends how many fires you have. Usually we have, I guess they still do, 2 fire meetings a month, first and third Mondays. That's usually for 2 or 3 hours, or training and business meetings. And then sometimes on weekends, they'll have if they get an outside trainer come in and train. Nowadays we get a lot of film stuff you can use for fire training. And then
Only the medical people would go out on the medical calls, right? Or the firemen.
Well, some firemen do because you, not really hands-on, they just kind of back up. You help them, you know, you don't need to be a trained fireman to help load the gurney. It takes hands too, but you know, there's enough EMTs in the organization to usually have one on board. That's what you want, one EMT especially. Now the chief is paid now. It's full time, so he's an EMT, and then he's got a assistant, helper, and they're all EMT trained. So now they're better having having a trained person aboard than there was originally.
I remember one situation in '99 when my wife broke her leg up at the farm, and you guys came up and took care of it all and had her strapped down to a gurney, but then we had to wait an hour for Medic 1 to get out there. And when Medic 1 got out there, they said, oh, well, you did such a nice job, we'll just take your gurney with her on it and we'll just trade you gurneys. And they got $600 and you didn't get anything.
That's right. Now with that trading the gurneys, that's quite common because they're all the same. So you just, if you got somebody loaded on a gurney and they come in from Bellingham, well, they just trade us. And
Well, in those days you couldn't transport. You could have had her into the hospital in a half hour.
it's still limited transporting, but here in the recent years, they've changed it quite a bit, and they don't. I don't know how to put it. They don't respond with paramedic like they used to. They want you to do some transporting on your own. So if it's life-threatening, they'll transport. But if it's just broken bones or something, they want you to do it.
Well, it's become a medical group now, not a fire group. Although they do a wonderful job on fires. I've had both medical and fire up there at the farm, so they were very, very quick, very well trained, very good responders. Anything else you want to say?
Well, if we couldn't put the fire out, we can at least save the lot.
Well said.
I can't top that one.
It's a lot easier answering questions than it is to try and carry on a subject. Any more questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Oh, as I heard it, anyway, I think you said that Fire District 1 covered 74 square miles?
74 square miles. That includes half the hill up here, though.
Since I'm sure that a lot of the rural areas were forested at that time,
Well, still quite a bit of it is.
yeah. What is the furthest and largest fire you've ever had to fight, and how many people were involved?
Well, the furthest would be forest fire. We went up and helped the Forestry Service up on the Mosquito Lake Road, I think.
Oh, really?
Well, we went up to Glacier once, and the Glacier Inn was on fire, and helped fight that fire. So that'd be the furthest we've gone.
How many people were involved in
Probably 4.
fighting that fire?
Yeah, well, there'd be some forestry service. See, Glacier didn't have a fire department in those days. The forestry service had a station there, and they kind of covered it a little bit, but they couldn't do much. So we went up to assist them.
What was the largest blaze that you were ever involved in fighting? Do you remember?
We had several barn fires, big ones. Out here in the Pool Road, there's the Van Heusen farm, a big dairy farm there. They had a great big barn.
Knudsen Farm
Knudsen Farm,
at
yeah.
that time.
It was
At that
Knudsen,
time
yeah.
it was J.P. Knudsen and Sons.
Yeah.
Is that-
Anyway,
is
that
the one that burned?
that was
Years and years ago.
yeah, that was clear back in the 50s.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was an enormous barn.
Yeah.
The call came in, barn fire in Pole Road. Usually that was actually out of our district, just out of our district. And we wasn't sure where it was. And we asked questions, always went, responded, asked questions later. But anyway, we got out there and Lyndon had arrived too. And I always kind of laughed about this. I asked, being Lyndon's fire, I went to the Chief White Camp and asked him, I said, where can we help you? And there was a chicken house on the north side of the barn. They were starting to attack that fire, or protect the chicken house. And the milk house was hooked to the end of the barn with kind of a driveway between them, but the roof hooked to the barn. I said, well, we'll take the milk house. We saved the milk house, they lost the chicken house. Yeah.
I can remember there was a big fire in Sumas in 63 or 64. I was there, and I remember that the Sumas Fire Department hadn't put any water on the fire yet. They were trying to get set up, and the Everson truck came in, and before the truck was even done parking, the hose was off, hooked onto the hydrant, and the water was on the fire, and if it wouldn't have been for the Everson Fire Department, the whole town would have burned down. It was an amazing to see.
Well, thank you. And we had a fire up here just north of NookChat there at the S-curve house fire. And I just got a new hose nozzle with a spray more than it was a direct stream. It was a fog nozzle. And we practiced with it. We called it our blitz line. If you hit fast and you got a kind of confined fire, it would, with that line as a fog, it would turn to steam and penetrate. Well, anyway, they rolled in there with the fire truck. I wasn't on the fire, but it's the story I got. They rolled in there and they dragged that blitz line off, ran up to the house and broke the window out because the whole house is on fire inside. And then, anyway, they hit it with that blitz line. The fire went out immediately through the whole house. It just saturated with steam. I had people come in to me later, what kind of chemical do you use in that fire? I said, we didn't, we just used water. Well, it went out so quick, and I said, yeah, it did. We didn't use 50 gallons of water in the whole house fire. It's just amazing what it did. And so when we had a chance, we'd always use that blitz line.
Well, Anton, I remember our honey house fire on the Central Road in 80, what was it, 84?
84.
84. And I was absolutely amazed at how quickly you got there.
Well, it always took time to get there, but we,
It couldn't have been more than about 6 minutes.
you know, Bellingham, as they start dispatching, after the changes in the fire alarm system, Bellingham started dispatching, and they told us on several occasions, said, you Everson boys are the fastest in the county.
Yep.
That's what I heard.
And we used to pride ourselves, like I mentioned about me living just a block away when that marker burned in there across my house. The siren would blow 2 minutes, and I could be out in the fire truck, there were the doors opening before the siren quit. And in the middle of the night, even. But, no, we prided ourselves in our speed. Not that the trucks were that fast, but just everything seemed to click. Any others? Yeah.
I'm just curious, did you ever have any tough fire women show up and want to sign up?
Yeah, they have a couple right now. They work out real nice in the 8 car especially. And But you'd be surprised, they get right in there and work too. You know, we've had like barn fires, that's usually our biggest thing. One night, just right down there, Lawrence, right there next to where the new station is, had a barn there that the farmer called up, said his hay was hot. He was afraid it was going to burst. So we went out there and we took a pipe and run down in, up in the hay mound, run down in the hay and pulled out, and it was hot. So we knew he had a problem. So we got a hold of Bellingham, the fire, Manchester's in there, he sold fire equipment. We got a hold of a lot of CO2 gas and put in the pipes and shoved in there. And we cooled that fire down. But the next day it was hot again. So we decided we had to take the hay out of the barn. And you got a couple of neighbors with balers come in and start baling the pitchfork and a lot of the hay down, and rigged up a hay fork up in the mow, come down like unload the hay wagon, and a tractor outside, pull that hay out and drop it on the ground and use buck rakes to hook it with on tractors, haul the hay out in the field, and it'd be burning. We worked 2 days in that fire, but we never lost the barn. All they had to do, we cut the side out of the barn to make a hole bigger to get the hay out. All they had to do was board that hole up. Another time on the new Kelly Road, almost the same thing, in a way. Hay was on fire in the barn. We went out there, and Smith Creek, I think it's Smith Creek, crosses right near the Kelly Road, and what's that road there goes by the Harmony School?
Sand Road.
Sand Road, yeah. But anyway, this creek goes in through there. We had a portable pump put in there. We had a line go about a block. We could feed the wind truck, but we had 2 pumps. We had a pond there near the barn where the manure pile was close by, and we pumping and putting the fire out from the creek fire, and all the water running into this pond. So we put the other pump in there, in that pond by the manure pile. We pumped manure water. We got the fire out.
EPA wouldn't let you do that now.
They probably wouldn't let you sell the milk if the cows ate the hay. Well, that's what we're using this. Any other questions? It was a lot of work over the years, but I enjoyed it. When I came to Everson, I joined the Lions Club, and I was city councilman, and I was in the church. I was on the board, and I was board secretary, treasurer, and I don't know what all. But I was just getting too much, and finally I quit everything. And I said, I'm quitting everything except the fire department. That's where I feel I do the most good. So, for many years, 40 years under the fire department.
That's a lot of service to the community.
Thank you. But Esther had to put up with me all that time. In the middle of the night. I got a kick out of one time. A lady come in. No, it was a fireman. Not a fireman, a gentleman come in. Says it was during the Northeaster. He says, well, you had a call in the middle of the night. I said, yeah. He said, well, I felt sorry for you. I said, yeah, but you just rolled over and went back to sleep. You tanker truck, an old army rig, and that Mack fire truck. Neither one of them had heaters in them. And that tanker fire army truck just had a canvas roof, like a convertible. But we never let that bother us, because we usually had coats and had gloves on. But I remember going to one fire with that Mack, to a chimney fire. We had, usually the two-man cab, but we a lot of times set 3 in it. But we had 5 in that cab. We were going down the Everson Road, and the old siren just a screaming. The siren buttons were on the floor. Somebody says, "Quit blowing the siren." And the guy, the other fireman, he says, "I can't get my foot off of it."
Fire truck tales. Yeah.
Anything else?
I think you've used your time.
Hmm?
I think you've used your time.
Oh, sure amount of time.
Well, are you finished?
You guys are.
It's all recorded.
It's all good.
Just wait to see what he puts together.
Yeah, really.
That was great.